Living together is impossible. Haven't I said I've reached my limit? I desperately appealed to my wife, Mary, but she just looked at me coldly and retorted, "If you've got a problem, why don't you leave?" "Fine, I'll leave this house." With divorce papers in hand, I stormed out. "I'm going to file this right now," I muttered to myself. After quickly submitting the divorce papers I received from my wife, I couldn't help but wonder what fate awaited her and her mother. My name is John White, and I'm turning 41 this year. My wife, Mary, and I have been married for 7 years. We both work different jobs. I was raised by my maternal grandparents after my parents died in a car accident when I was little. My grandfather, who loved to travel, took me to various places as I was lonely without my parents. Influenced by him, traveling became my hobby. I blog about my solo travels and earn income as a freelancer. It was on one of these trips that I met Mary. We happened to meet at a bar where she was drinking with a group of people. I found myself inadvertently following Mary with my eyes because she was at the center of everyone's attention and cared for me. Mary, who worked at a brokerage firm as a hardworking salesperson, seemed so bright to my eyes. We exchanged contact information, and after a strong pursuit, we started dating and eventually got married. Even after marriage, I continued writing blog articles from home while Mary worked as a company employee. One day, as I was chilling with a cup of coffee, Mary said, "John, I'm off to work. Can you do the laundry and make dinner tonight too?" "Okay." "Hey, can you pick up a tomato can for tonight's meat pasta?" I asked. Mary frowned in annoyance. "I'm working outside, John. Because you're at home, you could do that much, right?" "Sorry, I might not have time to go out today. I'm swamped with work." At that moment, the living room door opened. "John, I've been listening. Why are you asking Mary to run errands?" It was my mother-in-law, Susan, who lives nearby. "Oh, Susan, what brings you here all of a sudden?" I asked in a trembling voice. She glared at me, and then Mary casually dropped a bombshell. "Oh, by the way, I gave her a key to this house." "What? Why would you do that without asking me?" Before I could confront Mary, Susan stared me down. "Is there a problem, John? You're pushing house chores on your working wife. You should be doing everything since you're home." "That's right, Mom. John is awful, isn't he?" Mary joined in with a smirk. "He comfortably lives at home, not earning much, and still has the nerve to be demanding." Being criticized like this, all I could do was bite my lip in silence. "All right, I'll go. Just listen quietly to what you're told since you're being supported by your wife," Susan said with satisfaction. Turning away from her, I retreated to my room. My biggest concern was Susan. After being widowed, she lived alone nearby and seemed to be proud of Mary, who graduated from a prestigious university and still doted on her. Since the beginning of our marriage, Susan disliked my work-from-home lifestyle, always making snide remarks. Mary never stood up for me during these attacks. I realized after marriage that Mary, raised with praise by her mother, was prideful and vain. They still depended on each other, and if I ever complained about her, Mary got upset right away. I dreaded the thought of her frequently coming over. Just thinking about it made me feel depressed. Sure enough, Susan started dropping by often. She criticized every household chore I did and spent entire days at our home chatting with Mary on her days off. This life drained me completely. It was Susan's birthday, and I was on my way to her house. It was a duty I had to fulfill despite my heavy steps. Mary, having work, left the house, and we planned to meet there, so I headed alone to Susan's home. "Happy birthday, Susan," I said as I arrived first, taking out a beautifully wrapped box from a paper bag. "This is a gift for you. It's a handmade bag I bought at a shop I visited for an interview." Before I could finish, she scoffed. "What's this? Trying to go cheap, huh? It's probably some freebie you got, isn't it?" "No, that's not it," I hurriedly denied, but she wasn't listening. "I don't need such a cheap bag. Really, you're so thoughtless. I thought you'd like it, so I prepared it," I said, but she began to berate me with a sharp look. "Enough already. I don't like how you use your job as an excuse to travel and inconvenience Mary." "That's not fair. I take pride in my work," I retorted, but she continued to look down on me. "Pride in your little side hustle? That's laughable. You're living off Mary. Return this useless thing and bring me gift cards instead." "All right," I said, putting the present back in the bag and leaving for the department store. "I'd like $200 in gift cards, please." After purchasing and wrapping the gift cards, I returned to my in-laws' house, feeling heavy. "I'm back, Susan," I said as I entered. Mary, who had arrived in the meantime, popped up. John, it's Mom's celebration today. I ordered some fancy takeout. The dining table was crowded with dishes from a famous restaurant, but I was told to cook, so I bought ingredients. Susan interrupted. What are you talking about? This is obviously better than your cooking. Thanks for this, Mary. I could only watch them with a dissatisfied look. Eventually, I reluctantly sat down, and we started eating. Mary and Susan were chatting happily, but I felt left out. Near the end of the meal, Mary suddenly said, Hey John, shouldn't we consider moving? Moving? There's a new high-rise nearby. Living somewhere with a great view and atmosphere would really motivate me at work. Oh, a high-rise, how nice. Susan was obviously thrilled. But isn't our current house good enough? Mary looked visibly annoyed. We have enough in our budget, so why not? Susan glared at me, pressuring me. Exactly, a man should just quietly listen to his wife. I felt small and could only agree. Okay, indeed, it's not a bad idea if moving would improve my work situation. And if we don't give Susan a key, things might be better than now. I convinced myself and agreed to the move. While proceeding with the arrangements, I firmly told Mary, I need you to promise me something. Once we move, don't give the key to Susan. Why? It's no big deal. I've reached my limit with her meddling. If you can't promise that, we can't move. Mary seemed thoughtful, then put her hand on my shoulder. Okay, if you say so. I can't help it. I won't give her the key. Thanks for understanding. Mary seemed really excited about the high-rise, and with her promise not to give Susan a key, I felt relieved and continued with the moving preparations. Months later, we moved into the high-rise. The location was fantastic, with a great view and a luxurious interior. Living there with Mary, I was finally enjoying a fulfilling life, but the issue with Susan was still looming. Hey, can I invite my mom over today? What? You just invited her yesterday. She started wanting to invite her mother over almost every day. As a result, my stress only increased, leading to more frequent arguments. Please stop inviting Susan every day. Why not? You said not to give her a key, so I'm asking for permission. That's not the point. The day after our argument, I had to leave for an overnight business trip for an article meeting. On the day of the trip, Mary didn't say much as I left. I headed to my destination and busily finished my work. Despite the busy schedule, I managed to finish everything and bought some souvenirs on my way home. I realized something was off the moment I opened the door. There was a vase ornament that wasn't there before. It was identical to one from my in-laws' entryway. A bad feeling crept over me as I went to the living room, only to find it filled with cardboard boxes. What's this? Then, smirking, Susan emerged from behind the boxes. Finally back, huh? You told Mary not to give me a key, didn't you? Well, I won't be locked out that easily. Panicking, I confronted her. Susan, what's all this stuff? What do you mean? I'm moving in. It doesn't matter if I have a key if I live here, right? But what about your previous house? I've already canceled that lease. Proudly, she made me dizzy with her words. Then I noticed a piece of paper on the table. Ignoring me, Mary appeared in the living room, confused upon seeing me. Oh, John, you're back. Mary, what is this? I didn't agree to this. Mary, annoyed, said, scratching her head, what's the big deal? We have extra rooms. I can't live with her. I told you I've reached my limit. Even though I made an impassioned plea to her, she looked at me with such cold eyes and set it off. If you have a problem, why don't you leave? Saying that, she held out completed divorce papers toward me. Are you serious? Dead serious. Remember, when you defy me, we're getting a divorce? Now sign it. She forcefully handed me the divorce papers. That's right. Mary and I will live here, so leave, will you? Mary and Susan said so with a look that said it was obvious. Despite everything I'd endured, this betrayal was unbelievable. In the end, they asked me to leave. I don't need a family like this anymore. Biting back tears in my vexation, I calmly stated, fine, I'll leave this room. Good. Get your stuff and go. I can't wait to see how you manage your life from now. As I packed, Susan's laughter echoed. Mary avoided looking at me, but I had to say something. Mary, are you sure about this? She smirked at me and said, you'll probably come back soon. Just cool off. I left the high-rise while Susan grinned at me. With divorce papers in hand, I thought, all right, I'll file this immediately. Deciding to part ways with my wife and mother-in-law, I moved on. A month later, while relaxing in my new condo, the intercom rang incessantly. Who is it? I asked. It's us. Open up now. It was Susan and Mary on the screen. Initially wanting to ignore them, I let them in to avoid disturbing the neighbors. What do you want? I said with a troubled look. Susan snapped. What do you mean by leaving that high-rise? It's obvious it's already been sold. Her shock was evident as I told her the truth. Sold it? That condo was Mary's property, wasn't it? There's no way you could sell it. Mary's property? What are you talking about? I bought that high-rise myself. Susan looked at me, who had a calm expression, and then at Mary, who stood there pale-faced and motionless. What's that all about? I sighed deeply, looking straight at Mary. Mary, didn't you tell her? She remained silent, avoiding eye contact. I turned to Susan, who was still confused. You called me a bottle-feeding freeloader, but I'm actually the founder of a travel blog and occasionally appear in magazines and on TV. Magazines? TV. She gaped at me, astonished. I continued calmly, so I have some savings. By the way, the gift you rejected because it was cheap costs over $1,000. $1,000. She looked shocked. Well, I returned it as you wished. And about the food delivery on your birthday? Mary paid for it with my credit card. Her face went from shock to anger. Turning quickly to Mary, she said, Mary, then we can just buy back the high-rise from him. You're a top salesperson with a salary of over $100,000, right? You must have some savings. Mary remained silent. Trying to hold back my laughter, I told Susan, Mary doesn't have any savings. What? Susan looked surprised again, and Mary just stood there. I continued evenly, she's been continuously losing money on stocks. She's almost out of savings. Isn't that right, Mary? No, Mary, that's a lie, right? She grabbed Mary's arm, shaking her. Mary collapsed to the floor as if her legs gave out. I thought moving to the high-rise would motivate me and lead to success at work. But what? As I questioned her while staring at her, she continued mumbling evasively. I failed again. Instead of buying it back, I can barely afford to live with Mom. What? Susan panicked. Ignoring her, I crossed my arms and said, I knew it. Mary had no sense in trading stocks. I wanted to support her as her husband, but then, Mary crawled in front of me and suddenly strongly begged, John, I'm so sorry. Please, let's start over. Mary, what are you saying to this man? Susan tried to pull her up, but Mary shouted back, but Mom, we can't survive without him. She kept begging me. I spoke softly, Mary, look at me. Her eyes filled with hope as she raised her head. I continued gently, you never helped with household chores, saying it was my duty as your work-from-home husband. I'm really sorry about that, she apologized with a pained face. I ignored her apology and went on, you belittled me, saying I should leave? And now this? You took too much for granted. We're already divorced. I don't want anything more to do with you. Let's go our separate ways. As I firmly spoke, she tried to cling to me, but I silently brushed her hand away. Susan, having witnessed everything, cried out in anguish, wait a minute. What about the high-rise and our luxurious life? That's obviously impossible now, I replied. With a tone of disbelief, she shrieked hysterically, what are we supposed to do now? How about living happily with your beloved daughter? I suggested. She just gaped, speechless. I helped the dejected Mary stand up and ushered them out. The noisy commotion from Susan lingered at the entrance for a while, but it seemed to quiet down when the building manager arrived. Half a year later, I was on a new journey, traveling abroad. The unique freedom of being overseas felt incredibly refreshing. Recently, I received a message. It was from Mary, whom I had parted ways with that day. Apparently, after being evicted from the high-rise, Mary and her mother had moved into a dilapidated house that almost collapsed. To pay off her debts from stock trading, Mary worked day and night, and her mother, who had never worked before, took a part-time job in a factory to make ends meet. In her message, Mary expressed her gratitude, acknowledging the hardship of earning money and the lessons she learned. I felt a small knot in my heart unravel. Just a few days ago, after a long time back home, I agreed to go out for a drink with Mary upon her invitation. I might have taken out my frustrations on you for doing what you love for a living. I'm really sorry, she said, apologizing again. That day, I felt like I truly heard Mary's honest feelings for the first time. It's okay, thanks to that, I'm very happy now. She smiled wistfully. Going abroad again? Yeah, I'm off again next week. As we parted, she extended her hand. I'll live as hard as you, not to be outdone. Sure, I'm rooting for you. We shook hands firmly. Walking home, I thought about cherishing my work and living my life positively from now on.